Hello and welcome to the SpiraTest webinar. My name is Adam Sandman and I'll be walking through SpiraTest today and showing you how the functionality works. Today's agenda, we'll first be going through an overview of what SpiraTest does. We'll show you some of the main navigation and the main dashboards that you see when you first come into the application. After that, we'll look at the planning section where you can enter in all your project requirements and releases. We'll then deep dive into the testing section where we can show you how you can write test cases, how you can organize them into test sets, and how you can then execute those tests. We'll then run some tests and then during the process fail a test, log a defect, and then jump into the defect tracker to resolve the defect. We'll then finish up with some reporting and then we'll move into Q&A. The webinar should take about 30 minutes and we should have time at the end for questions. Everyone will be on mute until we hit the Q&A, and we can ask questions at the end, either audio or by the chat window. So let me get rid of the PowerPoint and get into the live application. This is SpiraTest, and I'm going to log in with the administrator. Please change. So if you have a version of SpiraTest that you signed up for, log in with those credentials, and we do recommend you change the password in the near future. And when you first come into SpiraTest, you come to this My Page view. The My Page view is designed for your end users. These are your testers, developers, and business analysts, people who will have to individually execute test cases, write requirements, look at defects, fix defects, and this dashboard will show them all of the information that they have to work on. So that way it's a personalized view of everything they have to do. They'll see their requirements, their test cases, which they can then execute. They'll see any tests they've started and have not yet finished, which they can resume. And they'll see any defects that they've either found or that are assigned to them, depending on their role. And each user can go in here and can customize the dashboard, change the information, and add additional items as well. As well as the My Page view, which is for the end users, we then have two other dashboards. In the main navigation, you'll see that SpiraTest is organized into projects and programs. So the items in orange are our projects, and a project might be a system with multiple versions and multiple releases, and then a program, which is the item in white, internal projects, for example, that would be a collection of projects that might belong, or systems that might belong to one department, one client. So depending on the way you organize things. If you're a professional service company, you might have, for example, the programs be your clients. Otherwise, your programs might well be your departments. It's however you wish to report the projects together. So let's go first into a project view. So we'll click on Library Information System, and that will take us into the project view. And this is a sample project dashboard. You can see we've got the name of the project, we've got the overview, and then we have various graphs and charts. So you can see the requirements test coverage graph. This is a really important graph that we provide. Lets you see the number of tests in the project and how they relate to your requirements. Do you have, for example, a lot of requirements that don't have any tests, which will be a major issue? In this case, about 16 requirements, 41% of our requirements don't have any test cases. A further 3% don't have any executed test cases. So we've written the tests, but they've never been run. So these two blocks on the right represent a huge amount of risk in the project. Either we haven't written the tests or we haven't run the tests. And then for the tests that have been run, they will typically be in one of the other statuses, pass, fail, blocked, or caution. Now we also will show you things like the test run progress. So how is our testing activity over time? So you can see the progress. That's the activity rate, how many tests are being run. The cumulative progress will show you what is the cumulative count of all the tests being run. The goal at the end it would all be green, and the red and yellow and oranges and grays would deteriorate over time as we test everything and then eventually pass everything, at least ideally. We also will show you the same information for test cases, so you can look at a current snapshot of all the test cases, and you can basically go in here and you can see the current status for each release and for the project. So you can see here, these are different statuses, how many tests have failed, how many have passed, how many are not run, and you can see the same thing for each release as well, using the tooltip. We also will let you show other information like the defect counts, the number of test sets that you have, or any overdue. You can see the defect metrics. Do we have lots of bugs? Are they open? Are they closed? What priority are the open ones? So this dashboard gives you a nice QA-centered view of the entire project. In addition to the whole project, you can also drill it down to look at just a specific release. So I want to look at just release 1. I can look at all of the metrics just for release 1. Or I could look at another release, or even a sprint or iteration within a release. So if you're doing Agile and you want to look at a specific sprint, you can go in here and look at just a specific sprint of an iteration, like that. And then expand it back up to the project level. So you have a project, release, and sprint view in this page. To go higher, you can also go to the program level and get a program view. And that will show you some of the same metrics plus some other ones across all the projects in your program. In this case, we have 2 projects in the program, library information and sample 1. So we'll see these side by side and we'll see the overall graph at the top. So those are some of the dashboards that you get when you first log into SpiraTest. And depending on your role, you may want to go into the My page if your job is to run tests and do activities. If you're a project manager, you'll come in to one of these other 2, the project level or the program level. So now we'll jump into the system and a little more detail. So we've got our dashboards. We now want to start using the system. So to do that, we'll go into the planning section. And if we go into planning requirements, you'll be able to see these all of the requirements currently in the project. And I'm just going to reduce the view down to 15, make it a little bit easier to see. And you can see here that we have all of the requirements in the project, and they're displayed in this hierarchical fashion. So you can basically organize them based on, for example, the functional area of the system. You can organize them by the module, however you wish. You can expand and collapse them. You can have many levels. You can have use cases. These are all the things you're going to have to test. So these should form the basis of your testing activities. So in this example, let's create a new requirement that we're going to test. So under the edition management, we'll create a new requirement called ability to archive editions. So this is meant to be an online library. So let's create a new requirement that we haven't yet got. So when we create the new requirement, it's going to be initially shown as not covered. That means there are no test cases that can test it. You can also find other requirements in the same position by just choosing a filter like that, and that's going to show you all of the matching requirements. The other thing you can do is you could assign a priority to this. Is this a higher priority requirement? Let's say it's a medium run. It's a relatively new feature, and we'll put that into a specific version. So we're going to add that feature into release 1.1. So that way, when you build your test plans, you know which version you're going to be testing. Okay, so we've written our requirements. Before we move into the rest of the system to write the test cases, there are some things you can do throughout SpiraTest. On any of the pages, you can use the toolbar to insert, delete. In this case, because it's a hierarchy, you can indent and outdent. You can also show different levels. You can also filter by any of the fields. And when you do a filter, you can also save your filter, which makes it a shared filter. And then you can then use that shared filter. You can either hit the retrieve option and choose it here, or there's actually a quick filter on the left side right here where you can just click on that and it will apply the save filter. And this was a save filter for critical requirements that have no test cases. So that's good. So that's how you would use those features. Let me find my requirement again. So let me find not covered. And when you find it, you can also do right click, focus on, and that will expand just that branch. When you click on a requirement in SpiraTest, you have one level down, which is the detail page. This lets you see all of the information relating to this requirement, which we just added. We can have a rich description in here, so we can go in here, for example, and we could describe the requirement in more detail. We need to be able to archive different editions of the books. And maybe you want to add some emphasis, you can use bold and underline, things like that. You've got a full text editor, you can paste in screenshots. You can also put links and tables and bullets in as well. And there's also an option to add comments. So we'll save our change. And we can then go ahead and start to write the test cases. So to do that, we would go into the test coverage tab, and then we can add a test case. And if this is an existing requirement maybe that has test case already written, we can pick and choose an existing test case. These are our functional tests. You can look in here, do we have one? I don't see one that matches, so we'll create a brand new test case from this requirement. And when you do that, it's going to automatically add a test case, and it's going to create a name of the test case based on the requirement. And we'll go ahead and edit that a little bit later on. So now our requirement's going to go from not covered to being not tested, not run. So that's good. And if we went back to the previous page, we would see our requirement. It's gone from having not covered to having this gray bar. That means there's one test case that's not run. If we want to add an existing test case to it as well, just to show you what happens, we could go in here, add a couple of other test cases. Those have already been executed, so you'll see they have passed and failed. Go back here, hit refresh. You'll see it updates the status here. So you can always see at any given time, is this requirement testable? Does it have test cases? Has it been tested? And that status will roll up the tree to the parent as well. So those metrics are automatically calculated in real time. So there's our requirement, there's our test cases. The next thing we want to do is just make sure we have all our releases. The releases are the versions we're going to test in. So I've already set these up ahead of time. We've got a release 1.000, we've got a release 1.1, we've also got some sprints and iterations. And you can see for any release in SpiraTest, what is the test coverage right away. And this is the same thing you saw in the dashboard. You can also track the dates, the effort, and one important thing I'll mention is that you do have the ability to determine, does the test status impact the parent release. So for example, release 1 is a major release. Under that, we've created two smaller releases that we've labeled as a minor release. Any tests I run against a minor release or an iteration, they will roll up the tree and will impact the metrics of the parent release. So if I was to fail all these tests here, it's going to impact the status of this parent release. If on the other hand, I've got a release under it that is maybe it is a minor release of the product, but it's completely separate. If it fails in this release, it doesn't affect this release, then you should make them all major releases. You should nest the major release under the major release and change it right here. That means that they're completely separate, and test results that affect this release will not roll up the tree. So you have control as to what will roll up to different levels. That's great. So now we've got our requirements written, we've written our releases. To add a release is very simple. If I wanted to add a new version, you could go in here, for example. I'll collapse the tree. I'll add a new release at the end. And I could give it a new release. So it could be, library system release 3.0, 3.3 like that. Hit save. You'll notice there are no tests. If I wanted to then just build a test plan for this release, I can then go into my test cases. And these are all the tests in the system. So you can go in here and you can see the common tests, the exploratory tests, the functional tests. The folders are up to you. You can organize them however you wish. But once you've got your test cases written, you can shift select them. And at any time you can go in here and say Tools, Add to Release. And then you can choose the release you want to add them to the test plan of. So that would add them to release 3.0. So we've got our release and some requirements and some test cases. So once you've done that, what you can then do is you can go to this list of test cases and you can first of all filter it. So if you only want to look at the test plan for release 1, you can use this drop down and change to any of the releases, and there's our new release. And notice that the test cases that were previously executed will all show as not run because this is a brand new release. So the system will make sure that any tests you run in, say, release 1 don't impact the status of tests run in release 2. So that when you have a new version of your software and you need to do regression testing, you can bring all of your existing test cases into that release and everything will show as not run because you're starting fresh. And so that way, previous results won't impact the new release, which is a good thing. So the next thing we want to do now is actually write our new test case and then we'll execute it. So my new test case was created from the requirement, so it will appear automatically in the root folder if I just go to all releases. And where is it gone? Yep, actually sorry, in the functional test folder. Ability to archive additions. That was the new test I created. It's in the functional test folder. If I want to put that into a different folder, maybe into the regression, for example, I just drag it over there and it moves. Similarly, I want to drag that one over. Click on this folder, there's our new test case. So you can drag and drop between folders really easily. You can also search and sort and filter on the test case page the same way that we could on the requirements page. So I now clicked on a test case. I'm in the detail page. This is where you can edit all the information of the test case. So it's right now a draft test case. So I'm going to review it. So hit save. And what I'll do is I'm going to make sure we have all the things we need. So it's got the type, functional, the component that is part of the book management. So we'll save that. It's not a suspect test case. If you see a test case flagged as suspect, it means the requirement changed after it was approved and you might want to edit it. So that's a good thing to know. So what we'll do now is give our test case a better name. So rather than just saying new test case, we'll call it tests the ability to archive editions. Hit save. And you'll notice in the requirements coverage, this one test case supports that new requirement and nothing else. We could use the add button if we want to link it to other requirements in the tree structure. So if you write a new test case and it's going to impact different features, you can link a test case to many requirements. So what we'll do now is write our steps. So you'll notice here we have test steps and there aren't any right now. So this is a good thing to write. So let's go ahead and do insert step. So step 1 will be to click on the link to create to access the editions. The expected result will be the list is displayed. Save and new. And you should be able to click on the button to archive the edition. And the expected result will be a confirmation dialog box is displayed. And then the last step would be confirm the archive operation. The edition is changed to the archived status or something. Whatever your application is meant to do, it should do. And this describes our test that would be carried out to actually test that new feature. Now, we haven't yet logged into the system, so one thing we can do is if we wanted to write a login step, we can just click on this link and do insert step and write the options to log into the application. However, we've actually already written the login test, so if I go into my test library, I can see that in my common tests, I already have a login to application test case that is already written. And if I click on it, you'll see it already has the steps to open the browser and log in. And it also has these parameters. And we've defined input parameters. So I can actually call this test case and give it a different login and password every time and reuse the steps. And this is a really nice feature in SpiraTest. So if you have common aspects that you want to use in a test case, for example, I need to log in every test case. I don't want to have to write that in every test case and then change it every time we change the login page. I like to have a login page test case that's completely reusable. And with parameters, it can be data driven. So that's what we have. So I will, instead of choosing insert step on my new test case, I will choose insert link. I will choose the option to link an existing test case. I'll grab it from the common. I'll put login. And I want to log in with IE. And I want to log in with, actually, I'm going to use Chrome. So let's do Chrome. Log in with librarian, which is the login. And the password is the same. We'll leave this at the field blank, hit add, and we've now got a login step. And we put the parameters right here so you can see at a glance what parameter values are being sent through to the test case. So that's our test case. Great. We've written the test case and we can now say it's ready for test. So approve it, add a comment. I approve this, hit save. And I'm going to collapse some of the sections down. If you're doing automated testing, you can actually link this test case to an automated test. We'll do that in another webinar, not today. And we can last move it to start testing. Now, the workflow engine that lets you move it from different statuses, that's up to you. You don't have to use that. Many customers leave all their test cases in a status or do a bulk move. That's really fine. If you've got a more complex, large project and you want to make sure that only certain test cases get promoted to testing, you do have the control to prevent them being executed until they're ready for test. That's all configurable in the workflow. And we have some KB articles on our website that describe different ways of configuring the system. But now we have our test case ready to go. What we'll do is put it into a test set. Now you can run it directly as a test case. So if you go back to the test case a second and go back to it. there is an option to actually run it right away. So if I ran this by hitting execute, I can run the test case, verify that it looks good and it works as I expect. And that's great for small projects or just to investigate. When you're actually going to run it for real, you'll typically want to give a tester a whole set of things to do rather than hundreds of individual assignments. And so we have the test set module, which makes that much easier. So I'll pretend I'm going to be doing that. So let's go in here and I'm going to put together a regression test for 1.1. So we'll choose 1.1 and I'll assign it to me, the system admin, and hit save. If I click on that test set, it's a manual test set. I've assigned it to myself. I could assign it obviously to someone else. It will send an email when that's done, so that I know that I'm ready to test. I could even put a plan date on it. So actually I'll say it needs to be done by tomorrow. That's fine. If you're doing automated testing, it works very similar, but you just choose the automated machine name, and that will schedule this test on different machines. And you can also have it automatically scheduled whenever a Jenkins build runs. That's another option. Or you can set up a recurring schedule if you want SpiraTest to do the scheduling for you on a daily, hourly, weekly basis. And the last thing we need to do is add some test cases. So I'll go into the add option, and again I can search and filter. So if I know where my test case is, I can just browse to it. It's right here. Add that. I can also add another test case just to show you more than one at once. So I'll go into my functional. I'll just grab the ability to create additions, because we have to create an addition before we archive it. So we'll add that in. And you'll see we've got the two test cases. Now obviously I want to create them before I archive them, so I want to drag that up and move it up like that. So you can reorder your test set with drag and drop really easily. And that way you can give each tester the customized order that they're going to test them in. So our test set is now ready. If I go back to my page when I first came in, I can go in here and I can actually run that. So here I am running my test set. I will choose a web browser. Let's pretend it's Firefox. I think it's Chrome I'm actually using. Okay, hit next. And now it's going to walk me through my test case. So let me get an application to use. There we go. I'm actually not going to run through the full application because we don't have that functionality in it yet, the archive, but we'll just have something to take a screenshot of. So I go in here, we go into the login page, and we log in with the username and password. So actually that part we did do, we brought the URL up, it worked. We'll log in with librarian and librarian. Okay, so let's do that. We can do that. I could put screenshots in if I want of the past stuff. I don't have to though. So I just hit pass. Click on the main menu, pass, choose the edition management page. Okay, let's pretend that passed. So I've passed my first test case and I was able to create my edition. So now I do it again onto the second test case. Go to the same login page, we did that. Log in with the same username and password, we did that. And now we go on the link to create the list of editions. Well, that doesn't exist yet. We haven't written that functionality. So it's a good time to pretend we have a failure. So let's say failure, failed to click on link. The menu is missing the item. And so now we would record a failure. Now this is where it would be interesting because it's a missing item. Maybe the answer is it's blocked because we haven't yet got that functionality ready. That would depend if the functionality was supposed to be ready. If on the other hand the functionality was meant to be ready, it's really a fail. We also have the caution option. That will be if it was a minor issue. So if I did be able to create the addition, but there was a misspelling or a minor issue, I might mark it as caution. In this case, I can't complete the test. The whole option isn't available yet. The menu is not working properly. That's a true failure. So let me put a screenshot in because that will be useful for the developer to see. So I'll do print screen and I do paste. And there's my screenshot. It's really easy. I don't have to go in and do any uploading or downloading. I just paste it straight in. And there you go. And the last thing I want to do is log a defect. If I hit fail right now, it's going to fail it and not log a defect. It'll also show me, are there any existing defects linked to this step? And if I see one, then I might decide that there's already a defect logged. Let me just link it rather than duplicating my defect. So that reduces the number of duplicate defects that get logged. In this case, it is a true failure. So let's go in and log it. Missing menu item on page. That's a bug. And priority is pretty high. I'll fill in the other information, and the test manager will set up which fields they want. In this case, we set up to a few of these fields here as required. That's up to you which ones you want to do. And I hit fail. And that failure will do two things. It will fail the step, and it logs the defect. So if I go back, there's my fail step, and there's my defect that was logged. So you don't have to click on a special button to pop up. It's just all done inline. This is also only one view of testing. We do have another view called the table view, and that's a nice view if you're used to Excel sheets and you like a big long scrolling table of all the stuff to fill in and pass and fail. Some people prefer this view, some people prefer the split view. They're functionally identical, just a preference. So I've run my two test cases, one passed, one failed. I can now hit the finish button, and that will finish all the testing of this test set. If I now go back in to my test sets, you'll see we have the new test set we created. Regression set for 1, 1, one pass, one fail. Click on it. And there's the status up here also, and down there. So there's lots of different places you can see it. And if we click on the test run, you're going to see the two executions. One test case passed, one test case failed. Now the failure is a little more interesting. The tooltip will give you the actual reason it failed, so you haven't got to click, which is nice. But when you want more information, you'll click on it, and you'll see the test run. You'll see the test that it was in, how long it took, and then scroll down. We'll now see the really interesting thing, which is the first step passed, second step passed, third failed. This is the login and password we use, so I can reproduce it. This is the URL I use, so again, I can reproduce it more easily. I might want to look at the screenshot if I'm a developer and go, what happened? And go, oh, I see, this is what happened, okay. And then look at the defects. There was a defect logged right here. And now let me click on the defect. And this is the defect. The name of the defect is right here. We have an associations panel that will link you back to the test result. So you can always go from the test result to the defect and vice versa. The Overview tab, this is the main defect tracking system. And you'll see all the defects here. Detected incident version is 1.1. That's the version I found the bug in. All the other metadata, for example, the operating system, the priority has been set. And if I scroll down, we do pre-populate the description of the defect with the description of the test step, what was supposed to happen, what actually happened, the screenshot, and then where the list of steps it happened. So it's all right here. If you want more information, you can also go in the Associations tab, Control-click, and bring up the test result, which gives you the step-by-step breakdown. You can go the other way as well. If I go into tracking incidents, all the defects right now are here, and I can sort and search them. So let me find the ones that are, for example, the most recent. Any types. So here, for example, is the list of defects right here. Some nice graphs. And if you click on a defect, you can click on it. And this is our very defect again, and now I would assign it to someone. And let me go in here and assign it. So let me assign that to Fred. Hit save. It'll warn me if any fields are required. So yep, the start date's required and the estimate effort. You as the admin, of course, can set those up. We just set those up for the demo. And I'll give a comment so that when Fred gets his defect, he knows why. Hi Fred, please fix. Hit save. And that's now assigned it to Fred. And Fred would log in, fix the defect, and then we would ultimately resolve the defect if it's fixed, or reopen if it's not fixed. So that's how you would run the test result, log a defect, and get the tester to then retest it and close it. So the last thing, of course, is reporting, and there's lots of reports in the system. You can configure them all as much as you like, but out of the box we do provide you with these various graphs and charts. For example, the date range graphs, you can filter by date range. I want to see things for the last week, last month, last year, or just a custom range. You can look at the defect counts over time, you can look at the test results over time, the cumulative count, the actual progress count. Do I want it for a specific version or all versions? You've got the complete freedom here. And any of the graphs that you see, you can also export the data grid. Like that, or like that. Get it as an Excel sheet. Get an image version of it as well. So you got lots of options. And the great thing is because we have the requirements and the tests and the defects all in one system, you've got the ability to do reporting across the different modules. You can do your requirements traceability reporting, you can look at your defect counts and your defect aging. How do they all play in together? So that way you haven't got to go into 3 different tools to find all the information. So it gives you a nice integrated view. And then other customers may want to, for example, print a traceability matrix report, and you can go into requirements traceability, and you can choose one of the formats. You can filter by any of the fields, and then when you're ready, you can just hit the button to create the report, or filter it more, or save the report. It's up to you. And then once you're ready, hit the button, and there's your report right here. And you can have this in a spreadsheet or Word document. So you can then use this to generate any of the documents you need for your project. And we do have a custom query engine. So if you want to build a custom report that your boss wants, you can build it all in SpiraTest, and it will generate it for you. So that's an overview of the system. And we'll now open it up to Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to either unmute your line and ask them, and I'll read them out. Or if you want to write in the chat window, then I can answer that as well. Okay, so there's some questions. The first one is, does this tool integrate with Jira? And the answer is yes. We have a synchronization service and plugin for SpiraTest that synchronizes it with Jira. And what will happen is you could integrate with just the defect engine if you want, which will push the defects into Jira, and it will bring the defects back in from Jira into SpiraTest. And when you change the defects in Jira, it will basically update them in SpiraTest. It could also bring in the requirements and user stories in as well. So that way, if you have requirements and user stories, they will come into the planning requirements section, and then you can use those to write your test cases from. So it integrates both at the defect level and at the requirement level. So that was the question about Jira. Also, it isn't just Jira. If you're using a mixture of systems, or for example, you're using TFS, if you're using Bugzilla, we integrate with various different defect tracking systems. And you can have one project use, for example, TFS, one project use Jira, one project use SpiraTest built-in bug tracker. You can mix and match as you need. So that way it's centralized. You can also have different Jira instances. We have some customers that have their own Jira instance they use on some projects, and the vendor has a third-party Jira on other ones. So you can have one project linked to another one as well. Can you customize the defect template is the second question. And the answer is yes. You go into the administration section, and you go in here, and for example, you can go in and you want to edit. First of all, you can edit the fields themselves. So we ship it with various statuses. You might want different statuses. You might want different priorities. You might want different severities. So you can, first of all, actually change the values. Then you can add your own fields, which would be, I want to add a custom field. That's called a custom property. You go into the type, choose incident, and these are all the defect fields. So that's how you would add a custom field or change the values of the fields. And the third thing you might want to do is remove fields from a screen or change which fields are required, make certain fields optional. So to do that, you would go into the edit workflows, and that lets you customize it on a per step basis. So for example, a new defect will be maybe requiring certain fields that you want hidden later on, or maybe when you first log it in. For example, here's our new defect. We've hidden the description, we've made require the description and the detected version, the type, the name, but we've hidden the fixed build, the closed on date, the open by, the resolved date, release, and the verify release. If you wanted to hide some of our other fields, like for example, we don't ever want to track effort values. We don't care about effort, it's not important for us. You could hide those. And you could hide it on all statuses or just some statuses. That's entirely up to you. The other thing you can do is disable fields, and that makes it read-only. That can be really useful if you want something like the estimated effort to be fixed. Once we log the defect, we no longer want it ever changed again because that's supposed to be a record of the original estimate. You might disable it on the new after the new status once the defect's being worked on. And this workflow system we have here is also available on test cases and on requirements. So if you want to have different review statuses in requirements or test cases, you can do exactly the same thing. Another question came in, will you post this webinar somewhere so I can watch it again? Yes, we will be recording this. We have recorded this actually, and it will be on our YouTube channel. It will be on in approximately 2 or 3 days' time once we get it processed and the audio cleaned up. And we'll also have a blog article that goes with it with some other information. So definitely we will have this. And if you signed up through Eventbrite or any of our meetup channels, then you'll get an email letting you know when it's available. Also, go to the ideas section of our website and there'll be a blog article, or just go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to that. So definitely there's going to be a recording, and feel free to share it with team members. Any other questions? Again, you're welcome to ask it through the audio. Just unmute your line, or if you'd like to write it through chat, I'm happy to answer it and read it out. Any other questions on SpiraTest? Anything we did in demo? Anything you'd like to see in another webinar? We could talk about automated testing and the integration. We have done one on exploratory testing before. We could do one on that again. Data-driven testing. So if you have any ideas, let us know and we'll do another webinar on that subject. Well, it doesn't sound like we have any more questions, so I thank everyone for attending the webinar. I appreciate the questions that did come in, and any ideas, let us know. And as I mentioned, we will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel in the next few days, and please check out our events page for other upcoming webinars on other testing-related topics. Thanks so much and have a great day.